It is Election Day in Alabama, and the whole country is watching, waiting to find out whether Alabamians pick a man credibly charged with child molestation or a pro-choice Democrat. Some say it's a preview of 2018 and a referendum on Trump policy and the Republican brand. Others say it could be the culmination of months of attempts by the president and others to discredit the mainstream media in this era of fake news, something Roy Moore's wife addressed last night.
Fake news would tell you that we don't care for Jews. I tell you all this because I've seen it all, so I just want to set the record straight while they're here. One of our attorneys is a Jew. We have very close friends that are Jewish and rabbis.
That clarification aside, nearly every politician in the country, including here in Massachusetts, has weighed in on this race, taking sides in what feels like a battle for our collective future. Joining me to discuss are Erin O'Brien, Associate Professor of Political Science at UMass Boston, Alex Veras, founder of the Massachusetts Minority Republican Coalition and a Trump supporter, and Lauren Dezenski, a reporter who writes Politico's Massachusetts Playbook. Thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
Right off the bat, predictions for tonight. What's it going to be? Erin, start with you.
You're the worst. Now, I think all evidence points to Moore, but I still think Jones might pull it out. It's my heart says one thing, my brain says another.
All right, I'll take that conflicted non-answer. Alex, what do you think?
Moore's going to win. It's not going to be the blowout. Probably be within 3 to 5 percentage points. But it's not going to be the blowout before all these things came out.
Okay, Lauren?
I agree it will be close. I think I got out of the political guessing game after last November, so I'm not going to say who it will be, but it will be close.
Okay, I'll take it. If Roy Moore does win, what is going to happen next? As you know, there was a lot of talk of possibly not seating him. There was a really good piece, I thought, in the Washington Post that ran yesterday by Robert Walker. He's a former chief counsel and staff director of both the Senate and House Ethics Committees, a bipartisan hire in those roles. And here's what he had to say. If Roy Moore wins after he takes the oath of office, the Senate will have the authority to begin an ethics investigation. The Senate may not exclude Moore, that is, refuse to swear him in and seat him if he is elected. So let's say he gets in. What do you think will happen?
I mean, it's a difficult position for everyone involved. Republicans need as many votes as they possibly can get to pass, key priorities, including tax reform, whether or not they speed up the process to get that vote through before Roy Moore is actually seated if he is elected. That stands to be seen. Also, you have Democrats who just are in the process of kicking out, members to try and gain this moral high ground. You would then assume that they can use that then high ground to subsequently criticize whatever happens next.
You totally anticipated another question I want to ask, so hold that thought for a moment. Alex, do you think the Senate Select Committee on Ethics has to take any complaints that they get and begin a preliminary investigation, but it's a multi-step process? No one's been ejected from the Senate or expelled from the Senate, I think, since the 1860s.
They could begin an ethics commission, ethics investigation, and look into it, but he's going to do what is typically now an all-American thing. He'll lawyer up, and they'll use the Constitution to say you're charging him on crimes that weren't committed in this body.
Right.
So that's what I think is going to happen. Yeah, he'll be elected, he'll be seated, but any motion to put an ethics investigation, they're going to meet up a wall.
Erin, expulsion would require, I think, 67 Senate votes, so you'd need to have 19.
It's not going to happen.
Really?
No. You've already sold your soul getting behind this guy. You don't sell your soul and then do the ethics investigation
but a lot of them
in any meaningful way.
Tim Scott was on TV this weekend.
67?
67. So
67. Not because they're good people or bad people. They fear retribution from the base. The Republican Party, some, not all. The RNC is back in this race. You don't do all that to get that vote, those votes for the tax bill. You don't do all that and say, oh, now we're going to get serious about this.
What about the question of sexual harassment and the high ground or lack thereof? The Democrats. Okay, good. There's the big takeaway tonight. Yeah. The Democrats have seen Al Franken step away, John Conyers step away. What do you think, as a Republican, a conservative Republican, if Roy Moore gets in, does that give Democrats the high ground when it comes to the issue of sexual harassment, which is so front and center right now?
It may give them the high ground, but they'll still go back and haunt Nancy Pelosi's word about John Conyers. He's an icon. They can still use that. But again, people are going to be, well, this happened years ago, bygones be bygones. But in this era that we're now facing, I think Robespierre of the French Revolution fame will be happy of. He's just another victim of what's
I
happening.
like the highbrow reference. So what do you guys think? Do the Democrats have this issue as theirs to run with if Roy Moore is in and seated and not expelled?
Sure. I mean, the Democrats have the higher ground there. But I think what this all points to is sexual harassment is not a partisan issue. Hopefully what many of us hope across party lines is that it's not wielded in that way. It's not about higher ground or lower ground or whatever. It's about the fact that people are systematically being harassed at work, and it's preventing their careers.
What you say is true, but it is also, in some sense, a partisan issue, especially because you've had all these lawmakers come out and call for an investigation of President Trump or call on President Trump to step down due to allegations of sexual harassment against him. Let's take a look at the way he pushed back against Kirsten Gillibrand when she joined this group. He sent a tweet, lightweight Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a total flunky for Chuck Schumer and someone who would come to my office begging for campaign contributions not so long ago and would do anything for them, is now in the ring fighting against Trump, very loyal to Bill and crooked, used. A lot of people saw sexual insinuation in that, Kirsten Gillibrand herself included. Let's look at how she responded.
It was a sexist smear attempting to silence my voice, and I will not be silenced on this issue. Neither will the women who stood up to the president yesterday, and neither will the millions of women who have been marching since the Women's March to stand up against policies they do not agree with.
And then finally, and I'll let you guys talk in, we had Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, saying that if you saw anything sexually insinuating in the president's tweet, you were basically, you had to get your mind out of the gutter. Here's how she put it.
I think only if your mind is in the gutter would you have read it that way. He's used that same terminology many times in reference to men. There's no way that this is sexist at all.
All right. Let's take a vote. Is this sexist or sexual?
Are women allowed to vote in this? Right.
Well, you have the 20th Amendment gave you that, I believe.
Yeah, I'm being cheeky, but I mean, that is absurd. It's simply absurd. Used, you call it begging. Our minds are in the gutter because the president brought us there.
Well, the big line is would do anything to get those contributions. Right?
They're all big.
We're in a new era here. I mean, this guy tweets better than I do. Tweets better than most Gen X, most kids I know.
Depends on what you mean by better, but flunky. There's a word I haven't heard in ages. But to put down, she would do anything. Yeah, that could be insinuated as sexual. I mean, he said the same thing about Romney, but Mitt Romney wasn't going to be asking for sexual favors. I just think that there could have been a better way to attack, but not using those words. You agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty clear insinuation. Obviously, the White House is going to defend what the president said. I thought it was interesting what Senator Gillibrand said, mentioning the Women's March and talking about the women's movement. I think if you want to go back into the political space here and kind of Democrats recognizing that there's an opportunity to seize on the frustration and the anger, you saw a nod to that in her statement and response.
Let's talk a bit about what we have seen Massachusetts governors do in this race, because I cannot remember a time that we had not one, not two, but three current and former governors taking an intense interest in a race going on in a SEC state or somewhere as far away as Alabama is. So first we had Governor Mitt Romney sending a tweet a few days ago. Roy Moore in the U.S. Senate would be a stain on the GOP and on the nation. Lee Corfman and other victims are courageous heroes. No vote, no majority is worth losing our honor, our integrity. Deval Patrick has been campaigning with Doug Jones. And then Charlie Baker offered, I think it's fair to say, a slightly less ringing denunciation of Roy Moore than Governor Romney, but he still denounced him, saying yesterday, I certainly don't want to see Roy Moore win. That means, obviously, that I would be supporting the alternative. I would just note that's not obvious because that's not the way he worked in the presidential campaign, but that's a discussion for another time. Does this make it more or less likely?
If I was Roy Moore, I'd be very happy that Charlie Baker's endorsing my opponent. Given Charlie Baker's record of endorsement here in Massachusetts in special elections, in which the GOP has only won 3 seats, and then he endorsed Dan Rivera, who won.
Wait, what about Dean Tran? You guys just picked up Dean Tran in the State House, right?
Well, I'm happy as a minority. I'm happy that Dean Tran won, but we got to be honest. If there weren't 2 other opponents in that race, the Democrat would have won.
All right, what's the effect of these endorsements from Massachusetts governors and campaign appearances? Does it help Doug Jones? Does it hurt Doug Jones? Scratch?
I mean, Deval Patrick certainly could play a little bit more of a role, I think, than Mitt Romney or Charlie Baker. I don't think Charlie Baker is really going to register much of a seismic shock with the voters of Alabama. I mean, the extent to which endorsements actually make a difference for voters themselves is somewhat negligible. But for the rest of us paying attention, I mean, it shows that there's a national interest in what's going on in the special election. election.
I think it has very little effect, to echo what you're saying. But somebody running for the Alabama Senate, if Massachusetts is against you, that electorate, that's an endorsement.
They're coming out.
Right.
I mean, the only way that former Governor Patrick can help is if there's a big black vote.
Yep.
But with a recent campaign ad that Doug Jones did, a flyer, where they had a black gentleman, and if he was accused of these crimes, this man wouldn't be go to the Senate if Doug Jones was black. It was totally offensive. I mean, reading in the Root and local papers, that's not going to help.
I think it's accurate, though. You can't tell me in Alabama if an African-American man was running for the Senate and had the same set of allegations that he would, A, get out of the primary, or B, get hardly any votes.
No, he wouldn't get. No,
truth in politics is actually nice.
He wouldn't get elected, but the way it's done, just to see the backlash in black media, it's going to be tough for the black voters to come out and help this guy.
Interesting. Let me ask you as a big picture question to close out. I had thought that the election of Donald Trump might be sort of a one-off in terms of his approach to politics, populist, very, very focused on attacking the media. But if Roy Moore wins, he's going to win by running the exact same kind of Steve Bannon-inspired and guided campaign. I think it's fair to say very angry in some areas, intensely populist, and taking on the media almost as public enemy number one. So if Moore squeaks this out, can we say that we're seeing a seismic shift in American politics? You were shaking your head.
I don't think so, because the context of Alabama is so central here. When you look at party affiliation in that state, it's not red, it's like Christmas red. It's so red.
What did Trump win by? 20?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the holiday, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if Ray Moore won in a place like North Carolina like this, or Georgia, then it would signify a major switch.
Lauren, you agree?
Absolutely. It's hard to infer national implications for a special election. Obviously, it's something to watch, and clearly people have their eyes trained on the outcomes here. But I would be reluctant to say that it is a seismic shift.
You see it the same way, Alex? Last word to you.
No. Given it's the Alabama, states that are Republican like North Carolina and Georgia, you can't run that type of campaign. People are a bit more gentlemanly about that. I mean, you definitely couldn't do it here in Massachusetts because it will turn people off. So it works in the Deep South, works in Alabama, works in Arkansas, works in Louisiana, that type of campaign.
All right. Alex Veras, Lauren Dezenski, Erin O'Brien, thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.